Kira sat in the broken building and felt her stomach twist with hunger. The pain had become normal now after so many days without food. Her pointed ears moved slightly as she heard distant sounds of fighting. The humans had taken everything from her world. She remembered when Valoria was beautiful. The forests were green and the cities were full of life. Her people had lived in peace for thousands of years. Then the human ships came from the sky. They said they wanted to help, but they lied. They took the food and the land and left the elves to starve. Behind her, something moved in the shadows. Ember came forward slowly. He was her dragon and her best friend. Once he was strong and his copper scales shined in the sun. Now, he looked sick and thin. His wings had holes and scars. She could feel his hunger through the bond they shared. Kira touched his large head gently. Her hand shook from weakness. Ember made a low sound that vibrated through the stones around them. He was trying to comfort her, but he was hungry too. Dragons and their riders shared everything, including pain. Her sister Maya had left 3 days before. She went to find food at the human supply base in the valley. Maya promised to come back soon, but she did not return. Kira felt worry grow in her chest like ice. All elven sisters had a special connection. They could feel each other even from far away. For the last 12 hours, Kira felt nothing from Maya. The silence was worse than any. Scream. Green lights flashed in the distance. The resistance fighters were attacking the humans again. Kira knew they would lose again. The humans had better weapons and more soldiers. The elves only had their anger and their dragons and their will to never give up. Kira stood up even though her legs felt weak. She pressed her face against Ember's nose. Through their bond, she felt his loyalty. He would fight for her until death came. Dragons chose their riders for life, and nothing could break that choice. We will find Maya, then we will make them suffer. Kira spoke the words out loud. Her voice was rough from not drinking enough water. Ember growled, and the sound made dust fall from the ceiling. For the first time in many days, Kira felt something other than sadness. She felt rage burning hot inside her chest. The human base spread across the valley below them. Metal buildings stood behind force fields and robot guns. Kira watched from the hill with Ember beside her in the dark. She saw human soldiers laughing and eating food while her people died in the mountains. The anger inside her grew hotter. But Maya was not at the base. The twin connection stayed silent and empty. That silence screamed louder than any alarm. Ember's voice touched her mind. He could see better than her in the dark. He spotted a transport vehicle leaving the base heading toward the big human city called New Haven. If the humans captured Maya, they would take her there. The fortress city was impossible to attack. It had plasma weapons and thousands of soldiers. Going there meant death for one elf and one weak dragon. But Kira did not care about that anymore. She was about to tell Ember to follow when suddenly the twin connection came back to life. Pain exploded in her head. Maya's feelings flooded through the bond and Kira gasped. She felt terror and agony and under it all a fierce, desperate love. Pictures flashed through her mind. She saw through Maya's eyes. A white room. Human soldiers standing around. Maya was chained to a chair. Blood covered her face and arms. The humans had hurt her badly. Then Kira saw what made her blood turn cold. The humans were showing Maya a screen. On the screen was video of Kira and Ember at the ruins. The humans knew where she was. They had been watching her. Maya was broken and bleeding, but she refused to tell them anything more. A human colonel stood in front of her. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. He said Maya had already confessed. He said she told them about the resistance hideouts and about the dragon. He said they only needed more cooperation and it would end without more pain. Maya's answer was to spit blood at his feet. Kira felt pride mixed with horror. Then the vision started to change. Maya was doing something. She was using the old magic their grandmother taught them long ago. The forbidden magic that traded life for power? No, Kira whispered. Maya, don't do this. But it was too late. Maya was pushing everything she had through the bond to Kira. Her essence and her soul and her very Life flowed like a river of fire. Energy exploded through Kira's body. It burned away the weakness and the hunger and the despair. Her magic surged higher than ever before. Ember roared beside her as the overflow made him stronger too. His scales began to glow. His wings healed. His size increased as ancient dragon power woke inside him. Through it all, Kira felt Maya dying. The bond was breaking apart. "I love you, little sister." Maya's voice whispered in her mind using the old nickname. "Win this war. Make them remember what it costs to make an elf weep." Then the bond shattered into pieces. Kira screamed. Ember screamed with her. Their combined pain tore through the night sky. Lightning crackled around them, responding to the surge of magic. The earth shook under their feet. When Kira opened her eyes, they were different. They burned with silver fire. It was the mark of an elf who received another's life force. She was stronger and faster and deadlier than before. She was going to destroy them all. "New Haven," Kira said. Her voice was cold as ice. "We burn it to the ground." Ember spread his huge wings, now fully restored and more powerful than ever. He released flames that scorched the hillside. His telepathic voice resonated with fury. For Maya, for all of them. The hunt had begun, and nothing would stop them now. Colonel Hayes stood in the command room looking at the reports with satisfaction. The elf girl Maya had been very useful even in death. Her sacrifice revealed the resistance tactics and their weakness and their desperation, sir. Lieutenant Brooks called from the sensor station. "We are picking up a massive energy signature approaching from the west. The thermal readings are very high." Hayes frowned slightly. "Probably another dying dragon. Put a squadron on standby, but do not waste missiles. Let the automatic turrets handle it, sir. The signature's growing. It is bigger than anything we have recorded before." Hayes walked to the large window and looked out over the city. New Haven was humanity's greatest achievement on Valoria. 2 million colonists lived there. Factories and spaceports covered the land. The fortress was impossible to defeat. Then he saw it appear from the storm clouds. A dragon, larger than anything in their database, emerged like a demon from ancient stories. Its scales gleamed like copper, kissed by starlight. Each scale was the size of a grown man. Wings that could cover city blocks beat the air with hurricane force. On its back rode a single elf figure wrapped in silver fire. All batteries opened fire. Hayes shouted into the communication system. The fortress erupted with weapons. Plasma cannons and railguns and missiles fired at once. The night sky became a web of destruction aimed at the dragon and rider. The dragon simply flew through it all. Kira's magic formed shields that turned away the plasma. Ember's enhanced scales deflected everything else. He dove toward the western wall and Kira raised her hands. Silver lightning charged with Maya's life force, shot down and struck the force. Field generators, they exploded in chain reactions that lit up the night. Shields down on the western quadrant. Someone screamed in the command center. Ember turned sharply and dove again. He unleashed his breath weapon. But this was not the weak flame of a starving dragon. This was the concentrated fury of an ancient worm restored to full power. White-hot plasma melted steel like wax and turned concrete into vapor. The western wall simply ceased to exist. Alarms screamed throughout the fortress as Ember landed in the breach, crushing tanks under his massive claws. Kira jumped from his back, moving impossibly fast. Silver magic crackled around her like living electricity. Human soldiers opened fire with their rifles. She moved between the bullets as if they traveled in slow motion. Her enhanced reflexes made their weapons seem to slow. She drew the twin blades from her back. These were Maya's swords, taken from the interrogation room through a teleportation spell that almost killed her to perform. She began cutting through the soldiers with perfect precision. She was not mindless in her fury. Every strike was calculated. Every spell was efficient. This was not rage. This was execution. Behind her, Ember's tail swept through a platoon, knocking men and vehicles aside. His claws tore through armored trucks. His jaws closed around a gunship that flew too close. He bit it in half and spit out the burning pieces. Focus fire on the dragon. Hayes commanded. His calm voice was cracking now. Get the heavy artillery online immediately. But Kira had already reached the command center. She blasted through the reinforced door with a wave of her hand. Silver energy tore the metal apart like paper. Officers reached for their pistols, but they were far too slow to matter. In 3 heartbeats, everyone in the room, except Hayes, was dead. She walked toward him with blood dripping from her blades. Her silver eyes burned with cold fury. Hayes backed against the console, fumbling for his weapon. "Please," he gasped. "We can negotiate." "Prisoner exchange." "Peace talks, my sister begged for food," Kira said softly. Her quiet voice was more terrifying than any scream. "Did you negotiate with her then? Did you offer her peace?" "We are following orders." "This is war, yes," Kira agreed, raising her blade. "It is war." Hayes died quickly, receiving more mercy than he deserved. Kira turned to the fortress communication system and pressed the button for city. "Wide broadcast. People of New Haven," she said. Her voice echoed through every speaker in the massive city. "You came to our world as conquerors. You starved us. You enslaved us. You murdered us. You made my sister weep for food, and then you killed her for refusing to betray her people." Outside, Ember roared, and buildings shook from the sound. "I am Kira, daughter of the Silver Veil, and rider of Ember the Undying. I am the vengeance you earned through your actions. Evacuate this city. You have until dawn. After that, everyone who remains will share my sister's fate." She cut the transmission and walked back to Ember. She climbed onto his back, and they took to the sky, circling the burning fortress. Below them, panic spread through the streets. Ships began launching. Transport vehicles fled into the night carrying terrified colonists. "Do you think they will listen?" Ember asked through their bond. Kira's expression remained cold. "Some will listen and leave. The rest have made their choice. They flew back to the mountains to prepare and to rest." The war had truly begun, and this time, humanity would learn a harsh lesson. They would understand what it meant to face an elf with nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. 3 weeks passed after the siege of New Haven. The war had transformed completely. What had been a desperate resistance became a crusade. Kira was its avenging angel, bringing fire and silver lightning. She struck at night, appearing from nowhere, with Ember's massive shadow blocking out the stars. Supply convoys vanished in silver flames. Forward bases woke to find their commanders dead and their weapons melted into useless metal. The human occupation, which had seemed invincible, began to break apart. But it was what happened after New Haven's evacuation that truly changed everything in unexpected ways. Kira had kept her word to the colonists. When dawn came, 10,000 stubborn colonists refused to leave the city. She burned the military buildings to ash, but left the civilians completely untouched. Then she opened the warehouses that were filled with food while her people starved. She distributed everything to the elven refugees hiding in the mountains. The humans expected a massacre of innocents. They received mercy instead. It confused them deeply and made them question everything. Kira stood in a captured human command center deep in the mountains, studying maps and reports. Her scouts had brought important information. Admiral Foster was coming to the planet with 3 more battleships. He planned to crush the rebellion with overwhelming force once and for all. "We cannot fight an orbital bombardment," Lyra said grimly. The scarred war chief had fought against the occupation for 6 long years. "If they attack us from orbit, no magic will save us from that destruction." Kira nodded slowly as she thought. "Then we do not let them reach orbit safely. That is impossible. Our weapons cannot reach space." Lyra stared at her with wide eyes. "We do not need those weapons." Kira's silver eyes gleamed with an idea. "We need to board their ships." Stunned silence filled the room. Every warrior present looked at her as if she had lost her mind. "You want to attack warships in space?" Lyra could barely believe the words. "With dragons and riders, not just dragons and riders," Kira explained patiently. "With magic and dragons And the one thing the humans never expected from us? Cooperation from their own people who disagree with this war. She activated a display showing intercepted communications. Over the past weeks, dissent had grown among the human forces like a cancer. Soldiers witnessed the aftermath of New Haven. They saw elven children dying of starvation. They realized they were not fighting monsters, but people protecting their home and families. A resistance movement had begun within the human military ranks. Captain Lane stepped forward. She was a young human woman, barely 30 years old, with haunted eyes. She had defected after seeing what happened at New Haven. "We have sympathizers on 2 of the incoming battleships," Lane said. "The Terra Nova and the Horizon's Edge. If you can get boarding parties onto them, we can sabotage the reactors from inside while you attack." "And the 3rd ship?" Kira asked calmly. "The Valiant. That is Admiral Foster's flagship." Lane's expression darkened. "That one you will have to take by force alone." Kira smiled, but it was a cold expression that made even hardened warriors shiver. "Then that is exactly what I will do personally." The plan seemed like complete madness. Dragons could not breathe in the vacuum of space, but they did not need to reach that high. The upper atmosphere would be enough for their attack. Using a slingshot maneuver around Valoria's largest moon, the Dragon Riders would intercept the battleships during their approach before they could achieve stable orbit. 70 dragons would participate. 200 elven warriors would ride with them. They would face 3 warships carrying 10,000 soldiers each. The odds were terrible, but Kira did not care about odds anymore. "We launch in 6 hours," Kira announced to the assembled fighters. "Prepare your dragons and your riders. This is our moment of truth. We either win our freedom today or die trying with honor." As the War Council left to prepare, Ember's voice rumbled in her mind. "Maya would be very proud of you and what you have become." Kira's hand touched the pendant around her neck. It had belonged to her sister and was recovered from the interrogation room. "Maya gave me the power to fight this war. Now I will give our people the future she died to make possible, outside in the valley." Dragons began to gather from all over the region. Their combined roars echoed off the mountains, creating thunder. The final battle was coming soon. Kira stood at its center, transformed from a starving girl weeping in ruins to a force of nature that would reshape the fate of 2 species forever. The sky was waiting for them. The upper atmosphere of Valoria became a storm of fire and fury and death. Kira held tight to Ember's back as he turned sharply through anti-aircraft fire. Silver shields flickered around them as plasma bolts tried to burn them alive. All around her position, dozens of dragons and their riders did the impossible. They climbed toward 3 massive battleships descending through the cloud layer. "Terra Nova's shields are down." Captain Lane's voice came through the communication crystal in Kira's ear. "We are inside now. Reactor team moving to position as planned." 1 battleship was compromised. 2 more remained as threats. The Horizon's Edge was already tilting to one side. Fires bloomed along its hull where dragonfire had overwhelmed the point defense systems. Kira watched elven boarding teams drop onto its metal surface. They cut through the armor with enchanted blades that burned hotter than any star. But the Valiant was different from the others. Admiral Foster's flagship had shields that held strong. Its weapons batteries fired in perfect coordination. Already 7 dragons had fallen from the sky. Their riders tumbled through the thin air in spirals of blood and smoke and failure. "All riders form up on me." Kira's command echoed through every communication crystal. "We break the flagship, and this war ends today." Ember roared his agreement and dove toward the Valiant like a copper meteor falling from heaven. Behind them, 50 dragons followed in tight formation. Their combined magic created a spear of silver light that pierced the darkness of space. The battleships. Main cannon turned to track their approach. Kira saw the massive barrel charging with enough destructive power to vaporize them all in a single devastating shot. She closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself. She touched the reservoir of power that Maya had given her through sacrifice. It was almost empty now, worn down by weeks of constant battle and magic use. This would be the very last of it. "I love you, sister," she whispered to the memory. Thank you for everything you gave me." She released all the remaining power in one devastating pulse of pure energy. Silver lightning erupted from her outstretched hands. A storm that was larger than anything she had done before struck the Valiant's shields. Instead of deflecting away, it began to drill through the protective barrier. The shields were not designed to handle raw magic. They were built only for plasma and solid projectiles. Against the elemental fury of an elf channeling a life. Sacrificed, they simply failed and collapsed. The shields fell away, leaving the ship exposed. Now Kira screamed at the top of her lungs. 50 dragons unleashed their breath weapons at the same moment. The Valiant's hull, suddenly naked, began to melt under the combined onslaught. Armor plates peeled away like paper in a furnace. Secondary explosions rippled across the ship's surface in waves. Ember crashed through a weakened section of hull, tearing into the ship's interior corridors. Kira jumped from his back, landing in a hallway filled with shocked human marines. Her blades were already moving in lethal arcs. Before they could raise their weapons to fire, she fought through the ship like a silver storm of destruction. Ember tore through metal walls behind her, opening the path forward. They carved their way toward the bridge, leaving chaos in their wake. Behind them, other riders followed, securing sections and protecting their flanks from counterattack. Admiral Foster waited on the bridge, surrounded by his personal guard. He was an old man with gray hair and a stern face. His hand stayed steady on his pistol as he aimed it directly at Kira's heart when she entered. "Surrender now," Kira said simply, without any emotion. "Order your forces to stand down. This ends right here today. You think killing me will stop this war?" Foster's laugh was bitter and cold. "There are 100 worlds in the Terran Alliance. 1,000 ships waiting to be deployed. Even if you win this battle today, they will send more forces. They will never stop until every last one of you is dead or enslaved forever." Perhaps that is true. Kira agreed, stepping closer despite the gun pointed at her. But they will think twice after today. When they hear how an elf who wept for food brought down 3 battleships with dragons and magic, when they learn that starving us and torturing us and murdering us only made us stronger and more determined, she could see the calculation happening in his eyes. He was doing the cold mathematics of war and survival. "We are not your enemies," Kira continued. Her voice was softer now, almost gentle. "We never were your enemies. We just wanted to be left alone on our own world. You came here and made us into weapons. Is that really the legacy you want to leave behind? To be the admiral who turned a peaceful people into something that hunts in your nightmares forever?" Foster's hand holding the pistol wavered slightly. In the distance, they could both hear explosions. The Terra Nova's reactor was going critical. The massive ship was dying in orbit above them. "The horizon's edge is ours now." Lyra's voice came through the communication crystal. "All human forces on that ship are surrendering to us." Foster closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, the fight had gone out of them completely. He lowered his weapon slowly. "Fleet-wide stand-down order," he said quietly into his communicator. "All ships cease fire immediately. We surrender to the Elven forces." The words echoed across every channel and every ship. On the surface of Valoria and in orbit and throughout the fleet, human soldiers stopped fighting. Dragons pulled back, hovering in the thin atmosphere. Their riders were stunned at the sudden silence after so much noise and violence. It was finally over after so many years. Kira felt the last of Maya's power drain away from her body. It left her hollow, but somehow whole. She swayed on her feet, and Ember was immediately there. His massive head supported her gently. "What happens now?" Foster asked, looking at the young elf who had defeated his entire fleet. Kira was quiet for a long moment, thinking carefully. Then she spoke. "Now we talk. Real talk. Not conquest dressed up as negotiation. You leave Valoria and take all your military forces. You pay reparations for everything you have taken from us. In return, we do not hunt down every human ship in this sector of space." Foster nodded, slowly absorbing her words. "That is remarkably merciful, given everything we have done to your people over the years. My sister taught me something important, Kira said as she touched the pendant at her throat. She taught me that strength and mercy are not opposites. The strongest thing you can do is choose compassion when you have the power to choose vengeance instead. She turned to leave the bridge, then paused at the doorway. Admiral Foster, go home to your people. Tell your Terran Alliance what you learned here today. Tell them that making someone weep does not make them weak. It just shows them exactly what they are capable of when they have nothing left to lose. As Ember carried her out of the dying ship and back toward the planet far below, Kira looked up at the infinite stars. Somewhere out there, in whatever came after death, Maya was watching. Perhaps finally she was smiling at what her sacrifice had accomplished. The war was over at last. The alien girl had wept for food. Her sister had sacrificed herself completely. Together, they had changed the fate of an entire world. But more than that, they had reminded the galaxy of a truth as old as time itself. Never underestimate those who fight not for conquest or glory, but for the simple right to exist and be free. On Valoria, far below, the dawn was breaking over the mountains. For the first time in many years, it rose on a people who were free from oppression. The elven refugees emerged from their hiding places in caves and ruins. They looked up at the sky where dragons circled in victory. Kira landed Ember in the central valley where thousands had gathered. She slid from his back, exhausted beyond measure. Her legs almost gave out, but Lyra caught her. You did it? The war chief said with tears streaming down her scarred face. By all the old gods, you actually did it. We did it together. Kira corrected gently. Maya did it. Every elf who fought and died for freedom did it. I was just the weapon they forged. In the weeks that followed, the humans kept their word. The battleships left orbit. Transport ships carried the colonists away from Valoria, back to their own worlds. The factories were dismantled. The bases were torn down. Slowly, the planet began to heal from the scars of occupation. Keira stood on a hill watching the last human transport lift off into the sky. Ember rested beside her, finally able to relax after so long. His copper scales gleamed healthy and strong in the afternoon sun. Do you think they will come back? Ember asked through their bond. Maybe someday, Kira admitted, but not soon, and not the same way. We taught them a lesson they will not forget easily. She thought about Maya every day. The pain of loss had not faded, but it had transformed into something else. A reminder of what was possible when someone loved you enough to give everything. The Elven Council had offered to make Kira their leader. She refused. She was a warrior, not a politician. Instead, she chose to rebuild the archives, to teach young elves about their history and their magic, to make sure no one forgot the price of freedom. At night, she would sometimes dream of Maya. In the dreams, her sister was young and healthy and smiling. They would run through the forests like they did as children. And when Kira woke, she would touch the pendant and whisper thank you to the dawn. Valoria bloomed again. Trees grew where bases had stood. Rivers ran clear where factories had poisoned them. Children played without fear. And in the sky, dragons flew free, carrying riders who remembered what it cost to win that. Freedom. Kira trained a new generation of dragon riders. She taught them magic and combat, but also mercy and wisdom. She told them Maya's story so they would understand that sacrifice and love were the greatest powers in the universe. Years passed and Kira grew older, though elves aged slowly. Her silver eyes remained as a permanent mark of what she had endured. Young elves would ask about the human war, and she would tell them the truth. Not legends. Not stories of easy victory. The truth of starvation and pain and loss, but also the truth of hope. The truth that even in the darkest moment, when all seemed lost, there was still a choice. To give up or to fight. To hate or to show mercy. To become the monster they feared, or to remain who you truly were. One evening, Kira stood on the same hill where she had watched the last humans leave. Ember was gray around the muzzle now. They had been together for decades. Through war and peace, through loss and healing, I miss her. Kira said softly to the wind, I know. Ember rumbled, but she lives on. In every free elf on this world? In every dragon that flies without fear? Kira smiled, and it was genuine. Not the cold smile of war, but the warm smile of peace. Yes, you're right, old friend. She lives on, and in that moment, standing on a hill on a free world under stars that held no threat, Kira finally felt truly at peace. The alien girl had wept. Her sister had sacrificed, and from that pain had come something beautiful. A future worth living. A freedom worth dying for. A love that transcended even death itself. 20 years had passed since the war ended, and Valoria had transformed completely. Where human bases once stood, now forests grew thick and green. Rivers that ran poisoned now flowed clear and pure. The scars of occupation had healed on the land, though some scars remained in the hearts of those who remembered. Kira walked through the rebuilt archives carrying scrolls to the library. Her silver eyes still marked her as different. Young elves who had never known war would stare at her with curiosity and awe. She was a living legend, but she did not feel like one. She felt like someone who survived when others did not. Ember rested in the courtyard outside, sleeping in a patch of sunlight. He was old now, truly old. His copper scales had faded to a duller shade. His movements were slower. But their bond remained as strong as ever. Neither could imagine life without the other. A young elf girl approached Kira shyly. She could not have been more than 12 years old. Her name was Sira, and she was training to become a dragon rider. She held a book in her hands. "Lady Kira," Sira said quietly, "I have been reading about the war. About your sister Maya. Is it true what they say about her sacrifice?" Kira set down the scrolls and looked at the girl. She saw hope and innocence there. Things that had been stolen from her own generation, but had been returned to this one. That made everything worthwhile. "Yes," Kira said gently, sitting on a bench. "It is all true. My sister gave her life so that I could be strong enough to fight, so that our people could be free." "Why did the humans want to hurt us?" Sira asked. "We were not bad people." Kira considered the question carefully. She could have given a simple answer about greed and conquest, but this girl deserved the truth, even if it was complicated. "They were afraid," Kira explained. "Afraid of what they did not understand. Afraid that if they did not control us, we might threaten them someday. Fear makes people do terrible things, even when they think they are doing good. But you showed them mercy," Sira said. "After everything they did, you let them leave alive." "Yes," Kira nodded. "Because Maya taught me that becoming like them would mean they won even if we survived. The hard part is not fighting. The hard part is staying who you are while you fight." Sira absorbed this wisdom silently. Then she asked the question Kira knew was coming. "Do you think they will come back?" "Honestly, I do not know," Kira admitted. "But I know we will be ready if they do. Not because we want war, but because we will never let ourselves be weak again." The girl thanked her and ran off to join her friends. Kira watched her go and felt a warmth in her chest. This was what Maya died for. So children could run and play without fear, so the next generation could choose peace. That evening, Kira climbed the hill where she used to watch for human ships. Now she came here to think and remember. Ember joined her, moving slowly. They sat together as the twin moons rose over the mountains. "How much longer do you think we have?" Kira asked through their bond. She was not afraid of the answer. Dragons lived long lives, but Ember had been through so much. "Long enough," Ember replied. His mental voice was still strong, even if his body was weakening. "Long enough to see the world we fought for. Long enough to know it was worth it." Kaner leaned against his warm side. "Do you ever regret choosing me as your rider? I brought you nothing but war and pain." "Never," Ember's response was immediate and fierce. "You brought me purpose. You brought me honor. You brought me a bond deeper than blood. I would choose you again in every lifetime." Tears formed in Kira's silver eyes, but they were not sad tears. They were grateful ones. "Thank you, old friend." For everything, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge. Somewhere up there beyond the atmosphere, human ships still traveled between worlds. The Terran Alliance had kept its distance from Valoria. Treaties had been signed, trade agreements made. The relationship was cautious but peaceful. Some humans had even returned not as conquerors but as visitors. They wanted to learn about elven culture and magic. Some wanted to apologize for what their people had done. Kira met with them when she could. She listened to their words and judged their sincerity. Most were genuine in their regret. They had been soldiers following orders. They had believed the propaganda about civilizing primitive aliens. Now they saw the truth. That the elves had been civilized long before humans left their own planet. Kira forgave them because Maya would have wanted that. But forgiveness did not mean forgetting. The archives she maintained held complete records of the occupation, of every atrocity, every death, every crime, not to fuel hatred, but to remember the cost of freedom. Young elves studied these records. They learned what their parents and grandparents endured. They learned the names of those who died. They learned that peace was precious because it was paid for in blood. A delegation from the Terran Alliance was arriving tomorrow. They came every year on the anniversary of the war's end. They brought gifts and apologies. They laid flowers at the memorial, where Maya's name was carved, along with thousands of others. Admiral Nee Foster had come personally for the first 5 years, until age made travel impossible. He sent his daughter now. She carried messages of peace and cooperation. Kira respected that. It took courage to face the people your father once tried to destroy. As night deepened, Kira felt Ember's breathing slow into the rhythm of sleep. She stayed awake, keeping watch out of old habit. The mountains were peaceful now, but some part of her would always be. That starving girl hiding in ruins, waiting for the next attack. Tomorrow, she would meet with the human delegation. She would speak words of friendship and cooperation. She would show them the rebuilt cities and the thriving forests. She would prove that Valoria was strong not just in war, but in peace. But tonight she allowed herself to simply remember. To think of Maya laughing as they played in the archives as children. To remember their grandmother teaching them magic by moonlight. To recall the moment everything changed when human ships first darkened their sky. And she remembered. Maya's final words through their bond. Win this war. Make them remember what it costs to make an elf weep. Kira had done both. She won the war, and she made sure no one would forget. Not the humans who learned respect through defeat. Not the elves who learned their own strength through suffering. Not herself, who learned that love and sacrifice could change the fate of worlds. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers. Somewhere in the valley below, a young dragon roared its first roar. Life continued. The cycle went on. And Kira smiled, knowing that Maya's sacrifice had made all of this possible. She touched the pendant at her throat, worn smooth by decades of handling. I hope you can see this, sister. I hope wherever you are, you know what you gave us. You gave us tomorrow. You gave us hope. You gave us freedom. And that gift would never be forgotten. Not while Kira lived. Not while any elf who remembered the war still drew breath. Not while the archive stood filled with the truth of what happened. The legacy of an alien girl who wept for food and her sister who sacrificed herself would echo through generations. It would remind both humans and elves that compassion was strength, that mercy was power, that choosing peace after knowing war was the bravest thing anyone could do. Kira closed her eyes and let the peaceful night embrace her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build the future Maya envisioned. But for now, in this moment, everything was enough. She was enough. The world was enough, and somewhere beyond the stars she felt certain Maya was smiling.